Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lauren Abner, and I'm the technology consultant here at KDLA. Welcome to the Digital Toolbox, Lending Mobile Hotspots and Laptops. We are really excited today to have Aaron Williams from McCracken County Public Library. He's the Adult and Digital Services Librarian, and he's going to tell you all about their pilot program to lend hotspots and laptops to their patrons. At the end, time willing, I'll also have some additional information about hotspot lending in general, some other resources that you may want to take a look at. During the presentation, if you have questions or if you have any audio troubles, please use the chat pod to type a question to me, and I'll be glad to handle any technical issues. And for questions for Aaron, we'll come back to those at the end of his presentation in case he happens to address those later. So without further ado, let us switch things over to Aaron. And as his slides load, suspenseful, all right, take it away, Aaron.
All right, thank you, Lauren, and thank you all for joining me today. My name is Aaron Williams, and I'm the Adult and Digital Services Librarian at the McCracken County Public Library here in Paducah, Kentucky. Today's presentation is titled The Digital Toolbox, Lending Mobile Hotspots and Laptops. We are going to be discussing our hotspot lending program at McCracken, how we set it up, the policies we put in place to regulate it, and how you can start a similar program at your library. So first things first, why should public libraries be lending hotspots and laptops? Well, there are a multitude of reasons, but one that definitely rises to the top is the fact that the digital divide has not closed. It persists. This is according to a report from the Pew Research Center's Monica Anderson. In that report, Anderson cites survey data indicating that 30% of adults with household incomes of less than $30,000 a year don't own a smartphone. Furthermore, in 2016, 20% of adults living in households making less than $30,000 a year were smartphone-only internet users, which means they lacked access to home broadband internet. Being a smartphone-dependent internet user is difficult. It can be financially costly, and it can be ineffective if the websites you're trying to access aren't responsively designed for mobile users. There is also the problem of the homework gap. The homework gap is defined as the number of households with school-age children who do not have broadband access at home. In a survey that examines the size of the homework gap, again, the Pew Research Center found that some 5 million school-age children do not have broadband internet connection at home. Low-income households, particularly Black and Hispanic households, make up a disproportionate share of that number. Obviously, this is an issue that creates an uneven playing field in the classroom because you'll have some low-income and minority students who will have to travel to the library or another place like McDonald's to use Wi-Fi to finish their homework, while you have other students who will be able to work at home. Some of these students with low or no internet access may also lack the means of traveling elsewhere and be unable to do their work outside of school at all. And you can bet that this is a scenario that's playing out right here in Kentucky in both our rural and our urban areas. So what can we do about all of this? Well, we can look at hotspot and laptop lending as a modern extension of the public library's role in our communities. Public libraries facilitate equitable access to information resources, and the internet is a huge array of such resources, be they applications or websites or other methods of sharing digital information. So we can think of hotspot lending as part of our mission and as a way of supporting our values. These are two relevant quotes directly from the American Library Association's website. The first is from Dr. Matt Finch, who says, libraries are innately subversive institutions, born of the radical notion that every single member of society deserves free, high-quality access to knowledge and culture. And the second quote is part of ALA's core values. All information resources that are provided directly or indirectly by the library, regardless of technology, format, or methods of delivery, should be readily, equally, and equitably accessible to all library users. Hotspot and laptop lending also teaches digital literacy and develops a particular skill set that can be used as a gateway to opportunity. What is digital literacy? Well, ALA defines it as the ability to use information and communication technologies to find, evaluate, create, and communicate information requiring both cognitive and technical skills. And then furthermore, digital literacy is also a component of the Kentucky WorkReady Communities designation. WorkReady Communities is a rigorous certification program that allows Kentucky communities to demonstrate their workforce quality. It is judged on 6 criterion. One of those criterion is internet availability. Specifically, the Kentucky WorkReady Review Panel is looking at internet availability as an indicator of digital literacy in a community. So we can see that digital literacy is a skill being recognized as crucial to workforce development around the state. So now that we've explored reasons why we should be lending hotspots and laptops, I'd like to give you all some insight into the program we started at McCracken County Public Library, or McLibe for short. It began when I attended a session on mobile hotspot lending presented by the New York Public Library and the Chicago Public Library at ALA 2015. After the session, I knew I wanted to start something similar in Paducah. We began looking for funding options and affordable mobile hotspots. We had previously partnered with Paducah Bank to acquire Google Chromebooks for checkout within the library. This was done through Paducah Bank's community giving program, which donates money to nonprofits and public service organizations. The Chromebook acquisition had been a big success for us, and so naturally we thought about reapplying to Paducah Bank's community giving program for hotspot funding at the end of 2016. We were then calling this project the Digital Inclusion Pilot Program, and we're asking for $2,000 from Paducah Bank to purchase mobile hotspots. While Paducah Bank didn't fully grant our request, they did give us a very generous $1,500. This was enough for us to purchase 10 mobile beacon hotspots through a nonprofit called Techsoup, which I will talk about more in the next few slides. Once we got word that the hotspots were going to be funded, we expanded our vision and decided that we wanted to bundle each hotspot with a computer. We knew we were going to need some extra funds, but luckily for us, our friends group stepped in, saw that this was a program that was going to bring tremendous value to the people who took advantage of it, and made a donation for us to purchase 10 laptops to go with the hotspots. So next, it was time to order the hotspots. And as I mentioned earlier, we ordered the hotspots. Hang on a second. There we go. We ordered our hotspots from Mobile Beacon via a nonprofit called Techsoup. Techsoup provides deeply discounted software and hardware to other nonprofits and libraries. Many of you are probably already familiar with Techsoup, but if you aren't, definitely check them out. You can create an account by visiting their website, TechSoup hotspotforlibraries.org, and it is linked on this slide as well. After you've created an account, you should be able to place an order once a year. You'll be able to find the Mobile Beacon hotspots in their product catalog. There are different product packages. You can get a single hotspot, you can get up to 5 hotspots, or you can get up to 10 hotspots. We opted to go with the 10 hotspot package. The service contract for each hotspot is $10 per month, and you pay that all up front, so $120 for a year of service per hotspot. There is also an admin fee included with each package. Our package that we bought had an admin fee of $108, so that brought the total cost of our order to a little over $1,300. Now I want to talk briefly about Mobile Beacon. Mobile Beacon is the company that provides affordable internet access to nonprofits and libraries. They donate, quote unquote, donate mobile hotspots to Techsoup in the aforementioned packages, and libraries can then purchase them through Techsoup. Mobile Beacon internet service is provided through Sprint's 4G LTE network, so where the Sprint network falls short, these hotspots unfortunately are going to fall short too. I know Lauren has already mentioned to me that Sprint's coverage is not sufficient in parts of eastern Kentucky, so if you are an eastern Kentucky public library wanting to do this, you may want to look at options through AT&T and Verizon, although those will probably be significantly more expensive. Another thing to keep in mind is that when you're ordering through Techsoup, you get these devices for the start of your next fiscal year, and their service contract runs through that fiscal year. What this means is that once you get the hotspots in late June or early July, you want to start lending them as soon as possible, because otherwise you will end up paying for months where no one is using the devices. And I want to repeat that for emphasis here. Once you get the hotspots in late June or July, you want to start lending them as soon as possible, because you're going to wind up paying for months where nobody's using the hotspots, and we don't want that. So what are you getting for your money here? This is the hotspot that you purchase from Mobile Beacon through Techsoup. It is called a ZTE Warp Connect. It can support up to 10 Wi-Fi connected devices, so laptops, smartphones, tablets, etc., etc. Each hotspot provides unlimited 4G LTE internet with download speeds averaging 6 to 8 megabits per second, and they have peak speeds of up to 25 megabits per second. The hotspots use WPA2 PSK encryption. That stands for Wi-Fi Protected Access 2 Pre-Shared Key. This is a way of keeping users' information secure as it moves across the cellular network. The battery can also last for 10 hours of continuous use when it's fully charged. Each hotspot comes with a USB cable and an AC adapter for charging, as well as a quick start guide and an information booklet. We include all of these original materials in our toolboxes. So let me briefly go over how you would connect a device to the ZTE Warp Connect hotspot. As you can see in this picture, let me see if I can get my pointer working here. So as you can see in this picture, there are two buttons at the bottom of the hotspot, one on the right here, it's a power button, and then one on the left. You can't really make it out, but it says FUNC, or function. So that's a power button and a function button. What you want to do first is power on the hotspot, and then next, once it's powered on, you want to click on this function key right here, located to the left of the power button. You're then going to press the function key again to scroll through the device's menu options. Let's take the pointer off here. And then you're going to reach, using the function key, you'll reach an option called Device Info. Next, you'll press the power button. The power button is acting as your OK button to display the hotspot's network name and password. And then finally, you'll locate the hotspot by network name in your device's Wi-Fi settings. You'll click on it and then enter the network password on the display screen. And all of this information is included in the instructions booklet that comes with each hotspot. So if you didn't catch all that, you can look in your instructions booklet. This is a picture of the packaging that each hotspot comes in. We are currently circulating the hotspot in its original packaging, but as you can see, it's made of like a papery, cardboardy material that is probably not going to be very durable in the long run. We will cross that bridge when we get to it as far as package durability. So far, it hasn't been a problem. People are taking good care of our materials, which is awesome, and I'll get to that again later. I do want to mention that New York Public Library and Chicago Public Library said they began using old plastic VHS containers for hotspot circulation after their original packaging wore out. So that might be an option you could look into if you still have a bunch of those in storage somewhere. So what else is inside a digital toolbox? I want to explore what else we've included in our digital toolboxes besides the hotspots. As we've discussed, each toolbox comes with a ZTE Warp Connect mobile hotspot from Mobile Beacon. Toolboxes also contain a Lenovo IdeaPad 110 running the Windows 10 operating system, a wired mouse, and an 8 GB flash drive. All of these items come bundled in a traveling case branded with the library's logo. We've also included the library's logo on the cover of the laptop and on the laptop's desktop wallpaper. The desktop wallpaper also features the logos of our sponsors, so Paducah Bank and the Friends of the Library. So what software do we use on the laptops that we include in our toolboxes? Well, we've installed the Microsoft Office Suite 2013 on each laptop. We've also installed iTunes, Adobe Acrobat Reader, Google Chrome, and Mozilla Firefox. For security and privacy purposes, we installed Phoronix's Deep Freeze Enterprise, which is also what we use on our public desktop computers in the library. Deep Freeze, for those who don't know, is a software application that protects the computer's hard drive by restoring it to a pre-configured state every time the computer reboots. This is a measure that protects the library's investment and also protects the patron's privacy. It won't store any information from previous borrowers on the hard drive for the next time that a new person checks it out. This makes it a little inconvenient for the patron who currently has the laptop. If they want to be able to save their work on the device, they won't be able to because of Deep Freeze. So this is why we include the 8 GB flash drive. It's a way for them to save their work in a spot other than the hard drive. And while we're on the subject of flash drives, I will go ahead and let you know that for this project we bulk ordered 100 8 GB Patriot flash drives through a marketplace seller on Amazon. We paid about $4.40 per drive, so around $440 for those of you who are wondering about budget expenses or funding needs. We also use a product called Absolute DDS that's installed on each laptop Absolute DDS gives us the ability to track the laptops by location in the event that one was never returned to us, and we wanted to hand that information over to the appropriate authorities. It costs us $280 for a 3-year contract through a vendor to secure all 10 of these devices with the absolute DDS. You may be asking, why not include the Chromebooks in the toolboxes, since we had all those Chromebooks we'd previously acquired. Well, there's a couple of reasons. One, Chromebooks require internet access to run Google Apps. This means that if the hotspot was in a bad coverage area or if its battery died, the borrower would also be without a computer. With the Windows machine, borrowers still have access to Microsoft Office for resume and other work even without internet access. You also don't see Chrome OS frequently used in business settings, at least not yet. More than likely, any job or class a person with basic computer skills finds themselves in is going to be running a Windows environment. We want to emulate that for our patrons so they know what to expect. We were also more familiar with setting up Windows machines for public use and maintaining certain administrative controls. And then finally, the Chromebooks we do have get used a lot in-house. People are always using them for browsing and video chatting and streaming, so they weren't exactly available to be included in these kits. So once we had the prime components of our digital toolbox, it was time to decide who we wanted to reach with these devices. We decided on 4 main groups: families with school-aged children, low-income adults who may be unemployed and or transitioning careers, non-traditional students continuing their education, and finally, previously incarcerated individuals needing to reintegrate into society. Our library is in close proximity to a local halfway house, and so this was a population we were already regularly serving. So you may also be wondering what kind of circulation policies we have for our digital toolboxes. When the program initially received funding, I wanted to model it completely after New York Public Library's program, which lets borrowers keep the devices for a year. There were others on our technology team who thought it would be better if the devices circulated for 3 weeks at a time, like a regular item. In the end, we compromised and settled on a circulation period of 90 days. Patrons must be 18 years or older to check the items out. Holds can be placed on the items and do not affect the lending period. Patrons get to keep the flash drive after their lending period is over. And the length of the circulation period is really something that each library should decide for itself based on community needs. So you all know your communities best if you think, we should give these hotspots or laptops 3 weeks to circulate versus 90 days, which is about a semester's worth of time. That's really up to your own discretion. I'm going to go over some staff procedures we have for checking out the toolbox. This is included in the webinar's materials, so you can look at that at a later date as well. We're going to assume that the toolbox is on hold since they will be on hold for the foreseeable future. We actually store the toolboxes themselves in a secure location in our building. What you see in the picture is what we put on the hold shelf. It is a numbered DVD case that acts as a placeholder. The number is located on the spine of the DVD, so you can't see it in the picture, but just trust me that it's there. We use luggage tags to mark each toolbox's traveling case with a corresponding number. So toolbox 1 corresponds with DVD case number 1, and so on. Inside the DVD cases, we include a copy of the lending agreement and then the hold slip, of course, which is what you see sticking out of the bottom there. So when a patron brings the DVD case up to the desk with them, we first ask to see their ID to confirm they are over the age of 18. Next, we ask them to read and sign the lending agreement that we've enclosed inside the DVD case. We then have a manager or a librarian retrieve the corresponding toolbox from its secure location in the building. Next, we make sure that the toolbox contains its primary components, the laptop, the hotspot, the mouse, and the flash drive. We can then check the toolbox out to the patron and ask if they'd like to schedule a brief tutorial on how to use the toolbox with a library technology staff member. Finally, we remind the patron to return the toolbox to a public access desk within the library and not the check-in room or the book drop outside or a book drop around town, etc. As far as check-in goes, the most important thing we ask our frontline staff to remember is not to immediately check the item back in. This is because the laptop needs to be updated before we check the toolbox in and trigger the next hold for it. We ask our staff to confirm that all the components are inside the toolbox, and if they are not, to alert the patron and then treat it like they would any other incomplete. If all components are present, we continue the check-in process by asking them to fill out the usage survey they agreed to. We keep copies of the survey at all the desks, and I'm going to talk about the survey here in a little bit. So we keep those copies at the desks, and finally we ask staff to take the return toolbox to a library technology staff member. So once it makes its way to a library technology staff member, we double check to make sure all the components are inside, and then we begin getting it ready for its next borrower. We thaw deep freeze, and we update Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, Adobe Acrobat, and iTunes. We run Windows updates because deep freeze prevents them from installing while it is frozen, so to speak. Then we check the toolbox in, backdating it if necessary, and store it securely. So what about late fees, lost items, and damages? We came to the decision that our toolboxes would not accrue fines. Again, this is something that each library system lending hotspots will have to decide for itself. We chose this path because we were aware that we were targeting low-income individuals with these devices and didn't want to economically burden them any more so than they already were. That being said, we knew we had a responsibility to be good stewards of public resources, and so we did develop policy language that would protect the library's investment and ensure the toolboxes reached as many people as possible. I should point out here that this slide does contain an error. Our policy states that we will deactivate the hotspots after 1 day of being overdue, not 7. We can do this by contacting Mobile Beacon. We just give them a call and give them the hotspots serial number, and they can take care of that for us. Our policy also states that after 7 days of being overdue, the toolbox will be billed to the patron for what we value it at, which is $550. As long as the patron returns the items in a satisfactory condition, we will waive these bills. Our policy also indicates that we will deal with individually lost or damaged toolbox components on an item-by-item basis. And fortunately, this has not happened yet. All of what we just went over, by the way, is covered in the lending agreement. We have patrons sign before we check the toolbox out to them, and that is also included in your webinar materials today. So what additional support do we provide for the folks who check out one of our digital toolboxes? The library offers knowledge and technical support to everyone in the community, including our digital toolbox users. Anyone who needs help accomplishing a task on the computer can visit the library and receive assistance in one of our 2 computer labs. We also offer people the ability to schedule longer one-on-one appointments with a technology staff member. We call this service Tech at Night, and as I said, it's open to Toolbox users as well. We offer this service primarily in the evenings when the labs are less busy, but we also schedule appointments in the mornings and afternoons to accommodate folks who can't come in at night. Sessions generally last 1 hour. We teach all kinds of things in our technology appointments, everything from creating an email address, building a resume, using social media, being safe online. We cover all of these topics. So how do we measure success? When we decided we were going to lend these digital toolboxes, I knew from the beginning that we would want to define some goals and measure our outcomes. Data collection is very important for a project like this because you can leverage your data to advocate for additional funding. For our program, we used a survey modeled after the Public Library Association's Project Outcome digital literacy surveys. We actually recreated the Project Outcome survey in our library's SurveyMonkey account and included an additional data point we wanted to capture. That data point that we were looking for was how many people in the household were using the laptop and or hotspot. We had previously used SurveyMonkey for our library's strategic plan community survey, so we had a little bit of experience and an account with it already. After borrowers return their toolbox, we have them fill out this brief survey, and what it does, it asks them if, as a result of participating in the Digital Toolbox program, they were able to complete a task that they could not do or do as well before, if they used the digital skills they learned to do something new or different, and if, as a result of participating, they checked out a book, attended another program, or used another library service or resource. And then finally, of course, we do ask them if more than one member of their household used the laptop and or hotspot, and if so, how many. We also ask them what they liked most about the program and what the library could do to help them continue to learn more. And our survey data has been really helpful. You know, it's not just data that we use to advocate for additional funding. It also helps us learn more about what our patrons' needs are. And so it's been really insightful. You definitely want to collect data about this project. I want to briefly discuss a few obstacles we've encountered with this program and discuss our solutions to them where there is one. Number one is the high demand for these items. Every toolbox we had checked out within 24 hours of debut, and we didn't even promote them. We just set up a display like the one you see here in this picture in our computer labs. At the time of this presentation, all 10 toolboxes are checked out, and there are 20 people on the holds list for the items. And the holds list would probably be even longer if we promoted this on social media or in the news. We can't really promote them right now with the holds list already so long. So those who are on hold have to wait a significant amount of time to get their chance to borrow a toolbox. This is the drawback to giving people a semester's worth of time to have access to a computer and home internet. We are hoping to add more toolboxes and perhaps just some standalone hotspots that can circulate for a shorter period of time to shorten this waiting list and the overall waiting period. We've heard from one person who said that network coverage has been a problem for them. The mobile beacon hotspots, again, use Sprint's network, so where it falls short, they're going to as well. This particular person was living in a dead zone in southern McCracken County near the Graves County border. We've also had to keep an eye on the holds list to make sure kids and teens were not placing holds on these devices. We've had one issue with 2 members of the same household trying to place a hold on the toolbox. Thankfully, it was resolved with a simple and courteous phone call reminding them of the library's policy. We haven't had any problems with damages or lost items so far. I'm very happy to report that 100% of our toolboxes and their components have come back whole and undamaged after their first lending period. So as far as dealing with the issue of kids and teens placing holds on the toolboxes and multiple household members being on hold for one, this is something we've addressed by simply monitoring our holds list for the items. I'm the one who is responsible for doing this, and I will usually alert my manager and the technical services manager when there is an issue and we need to modify the list. This has only happened a handful of times, but it can be a bit of a pain. Our ILS setup does not easily allow us to block teens and kids from placing holds on these items. Yours may be able to do so more effectively if you choose to implement a similar policy. Also, a word of caution about updating the laptops when they come back for the first time in 3 months. It can take a little bit of time. We are probably averaging around 3 or 4 hours of downtime to run updates and reconfigure the computers as necessary. If you don't have this kind of staff time, you may want to lend something like Chromebooks instead. Just remember that you want to maintain administrative control over anything you lend to protect both the library and the previous patrons who have borrowed the computer. So if you're thinking, this sounds great, but I don't know how my library will afford it, I have a few suggestions for you. Look for funding partners. This does not necessarily have to be a budget expense, but it can be if you have a robust tech budget at your library. See if your local banks have a community giving program. I know for sure that the Walmart Foundation has a community giving program because we just received funds from them for the Digital Toolbox's second fiscal year, and it was super easy to apply for. You may also ask for support from your friends group. If they're super awesome like ours is, they may be able to help you out. And then finally, I will let you know that Mobile Beacon does have a Wi-Fi lending launch kit grant that is very generous, but also very competitive. It's valued at around $20,000, and they give it to 2 organizations across the whole United States. But if you have the time and the talent and the community need, it may be worth a shot. So what's next for the Digital Toolbox program? Well, as I've said several times already, we need more toolboxes and hotspots. We have sent several funding requests out, some of them filled, some of them denied, some we are still waiting to hear back from. Going forward, I see the need of a kind of digital toolbox curriculum where we formally develop instruction on setting up an email address, building a resume, and so on. It may be that we rely on existing resources like the Learning Express Library, which is something we should all have access to through the Kentucky Virtual Library. We are doing this kind of instruction already, of course, with our tech appointments, but it may also be a good idea to upload some lessons to our website and YouTube for remote access. We also may incorporate such curriculum into our developing partnership with the Kentucky Career Center and the Adult Learning Center. We're going to be starting a pilot program with them here at McCracken County Public Library this spring. It's going to be modeled after LEAF, or the Library Economic Advantage Forum. Our class size is going to be 10, and I think it would be really cool for each learner to have a computer and a hotspot to work on their lessons and skills from home, but that is something that's going to require additional funding and resources. Regardless, I think there's a lot of buzz around the state right now over using hotspot lending as a means of workforce development. We will see what comes of that. And so this concludes my presentation for today. I'll take any questions you may have. If I can say one more thing, it would be to please follow the McCracken County Public Library on our social media channels if you do not already. It's a great way to keep up with us and see all the exciting things we have going on at our library right now.
Well, thank you very much, Aaron, for that presentation. I'm actually going to go ahead and switch over to your last slide right now that has your contact information, which will also appear at the very end of the slides during my portion. So now is your opportunity, everyone, to put your questions into the chat area, since we've got plenty of time to take those, and this is a great opportunity to talk with someone who has quite a bit of experience. So let's get started. I do see a question from Shelley. I'm not sure if Aaron and I will know this. Does Bluegrass Cellular offer hotspot service? I believe they do. I'm not sure that they offer deals on the scale that some of the larger carriers offer them, but you could certainly check with them to see if you can get some kind of package deal if that's really the best provider in your area. Guest has asked about how using hotspots fits in with the Children's Internet Protection Act, which is called SIPA, and about needing to filter the content. So I will field that question, since that really pertains to E-rate. I know several of you attending today are from libraries that receive E-rate funding, and recall for E-rate that if you get funding for internet access or for certain pieces of networking equipment, anything that goes under Category 2, then library-owned computers have to have filtered internet access for certain types of visual images. But when I've looked into the hotspot scenario before, I don't think this is going to be an issue for libraries that are looking into lending hotspots to patrons at home. You may recall in the E-rate program that really about the only scenario where you can get E-rate discounts on cellular data is for the library bookmobile. That's the loophole, because the bookmobile is considered library property, and cellular data is the only effective way to provide internet access on that particular piece of library property. So if you're trying to start a hotspot lending program for patron use at home, those devices are not going to be eligible for E-rate support because they're going home to patrons. They are not being used on library property, and I would guess there's probably going to be a lot of questions about the cost effectiveness as well. So in which case, if you don't have library-owned computers that are going to be accessing the internet on those hotspot devices that aren't even funded by E-rate, then you're not really having to worry about that filtering that would normally be required for library internet funded through the E-rate program. And we can talk more specifically about that later, so please feel free to email me directly, and my email will be at the end of the presentation. Okay, on to a question for Aaron. This question comes from Zach, I believe, in Marshall County. If a laptop comes back damaged, but the patron cannot afford to pay, what steps are you guys going to take to replace it?
That's a good question, Zach. We haven't had that scenario happen yet. It's probably one of those things where we would cross that bridge when we got there. It would certainly be a conversation that I had with my manager, the technical services manager, and our director. Our policy says that we are going to review them on an item-by-item basis. Thankfully, we have a warranty on these computers for the first 3 years of their life. So it wouldn't be a situation, at least for the first 3 years, where we would absolutely have to charge the patron to get our money back. I know that there are going to be other libraries out there, though, that can't afford warranties, or, can't afford to be so lenient. So it's really up to your institution and your leadership to do what is both practical, financially responsible, but also considerate to the patron and their situation.
Excellent. All right, another question, can the hotspots be renewed?
The hotspots cannot be renewed. The toolboxes, they check out for one 90-day lending period, and then after they come back, they are on to the next person because the lending period is so long. So if you needed more time with the hotspot, you would have to go on hold again at the bottom of the holds list.
Okay. Then we have another question about how do you catalog the hotspots, and another staff member from McCracken County Public Library has put in the link for the record in the catalog. I don't know if you have any other commentary.
So you can take a look at that catalog record. I believe our technical services manager, Brian, has cataloged the toolboxes as a volumized set. Technical services is not my forte, so if that catalog record does not answer your question, if you will follow up with me either by phone or by email, I can get with Brian and tell you exactly how we do that.
Excellent. Another question, what happens if the patron moves while they have the hotspots and laptop, the toolbox kit checked out to them?
Well, I would suppose it would be like any other item that a patron might have. If they moved while they had it, you would hope that they return it to you. If they don't, our policy is clear. After 7 days, we bill them for the item. If it went on for a period longer than that, it would be time to contact Absolute DDS and see where this device was, and go from there. It's also in our policy that we reserve the right to hand that information over to the appropriate authorities.
Okay. Question from Jennifer in Owen County. Why was the 90-day lending period chosen instead of a shorter period so more patrons could get a chance to use them? Just curious.
Yeah, the 90-day period, it was a decision we made to give them, a semester's worth of time with these devices. Remember, two categories of our target audience for these devices. One, school-age families with children, or families with school-age children, pardon me, and two, non-traditional students. So giving them these devices for 90 days essentially lets them have a computer and home internet access for a semester of schoolwork.
I would also add to your answer, Aaron, that in reading up on some of these hotspot programs, the lending period may also depend on the amount of data that you have available for the device each month. If you have an unlimited plan for each device, it's maybe not such a big deal, but you may need to make certain considerations if you have a limited amount of data per month and you don't want to have a hotspot that's checked out to one person who uses up all of the data where it's very heavily throttled to a very slow speed for the next user who checks it out. So I think it would just kind of vary depending on what sort of package you've got with the hotspots that you end up lending to your patrons.
That's an excellent point.
Okay, let me see if I have missed anything else. We have lots of commentary. Okay, so a question from Jim in Simpson County. Aaron, does mobile beacon throttle past a certain data usage point?
That information is on Mobile Beacon's website. I seem to recall they have a policy where if over 23 gigabytes are used in a billing cycle, a user may be deprioritized.
Gotcha. That's a good clarification to have. Oh, and I see that in the chat that Susan Byer, the director at McCracken County Public Library, has put in a comment about wanting to support people despite the possibility of worst case scenarios. So thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, I want to reiterate that as well. We have set up policies that I believe are practical and strike the right balance. We have extended some faith in humanity, but I would say so far that faith has been rewarded. We haven't had any issues, and if we do have issues, we have the proper policies in place to deal with them.
Okay, and I think Jim would like a clarification. You mentioned 23 gigabytes of data per month for each hotspot, potentially from Mobile Beacon, knowing that we will need
23 gigabytes per hotspot.
That's pretty good. That's not, unlimited, but that's really good.
Yes.
Okay, folks, please go ahead and keep some questions coming in. I'm going to switch over to my smaller section of slides for some general information, but both Aaron and I will be on the line, and we'll be glad to take some questions throughout. So I'll just take a moment for the last section of slides to load. So just a few things to wrap up in case you want to do more research. So first, I wanted to point out some research that's been funded by the Institute of Museum and Library Services, our good friends who fund so many opportunities and consulting, and our CE here at KDLA. They support a lot of really important library projects. So with the University of Texas at Austin, Oklahoma State University, and Simmons College, there's a project to study the impact of rural hotspot lending. So the first link at the edges of the National Digital Platform is the site where those researchers link to all of the articles where they're referencing their research, just anything about the project you can find on that particular page, including some case studies for rural lending in different states. Also, if you're looking for your first document to really dive into all the various things to consider with hotspot lending, they have a document called Starting a Mobile Hotspot Lending Program. That's pretty thorough, goes through all the different scenarios and questions you may want to ask. And I believe there's also a brochure version in Spanish that has some of that information as well. If you're a data nerd, you may want to take a look at the slides from a presentation that one of the researchers did for libraries in Oklahoma called Rural Library Hotspot Lending Programs. So it goes through some of that case study information, sort of the response from patrons who had used services in those states, the cost scenarios. So there's a lot of data if that is your thing. And before I go to my next slide, let me just check and see if I have missed any questions in the meantime, because I want to make sure we catch Aaron more than we catch anything I have to say. Let's see. Okay, I don't think I've missed any questions, so you may want to type again if I have missed a question that you typed. All right, if you're trying to figure out what vendor to use, you may want to take a look at the website OpenSignal. That provides a network coverage map for some of the major cell phone carriers. So you can look at a particular city, parts of your county, and you can look at different cell carriers like AT&T and Sprint and Verizon, and just get an idea based on the map about where their cell service is going to be pretty strong. And that may be a factor in considering various offers from vendors, whether or not it's really going to provide sufficient coverage in at least most parts of your county. So you can go to the link included on that page to start researching in your area. Also, other state libraries have been trying to support their rural or small libraries that are trying to start these hotspot lending programs, so you may want to take a look at some of their presentations and other materials. Nebraska State Library Commission has a webinar circulating the internet, how to loan Wi-Fi hotspots. And if you go to that page, they link to some additional documents they made available from Norfolk Public Library. And if Verizon tends to be a vendor that has good service in your county, you may want to take a look at what's linked there, because that library includes some of their instructional materials very specific to Verizon's hotspots, as far as here's how to use it, tips on how to maybe limit the amount of data you're using in case you're going to run out for the month, things like that. So pretty good set of alternate documents, because we want you to have as many examples to examine as possible. Also, the Texas State Library and Archives Commission, they have done a couple different webinars on hotspots. So the first one, Lending Wi-Fi Hotspot Devices to Patrons, includes links to policies and procedures from Keller Public Library if you're looking for an alternative. They also have another webinar, I believe with some of those researchers I mentioned earlier, called Lending Wi-Fi Hotspots in Urban and Rural Communities. Finally, if you're, again, looking for an overview document, they have a pretty comprehensive blog post from November 2016. Let's see, hopefully, again, I haven't missed any questions. My apologies if I have. Just as a reminder for any KDLA training, if you're looking for the latest news or webinar notices or have any questions about technology, the best place to join, to go for help, is the Kentucky Tech Listserv. So you can use the blank message, send it to the address listed there, or you can contact me directly if you'd like to join the Kentucky Tech Listserv. Be glad to get you added. This presentation, of course, is being recorded, and you can find all sorts of previous training from KDLA, many of which were created with help from our friends around the Kentucky Public Library community. So visit the KDLA archive webinars page. This webinar will be posted under, I think, technology and adult services or adult programming. So our final slide, if you don't mind, we have a survey that we ask our attendees to fill out. So whether you're attending today live or if you're watching the archived recording, you can actually just click on the slide itself for that link to go to our SurveyMonkey account, fill out that particular survey. We use those responses to help improve our training, but we also need that for our grant reporting. We are supported by the Institute of Museum and Library Services, so your responses are very important, so we appreciate any time that you take to fill that out. So we'll hang out for a few more minutes in order to take any additional questions. Contact information for Aaron Williams and myself is included. Thank you again, Aaron, for your wonderful presentation. We know this was a topic that was very much needed. We've heard over and over again from libraries around the state trying to figure out how to get some of these programs off the ground. And we love that you had kind of the unique information about also lending the laptops outside the building. So
thank you, Lauren, and thanks everybody for joining us today. I hope you took something away from this that will help you start a similar program at your library.